Pokemon rivals have been a staple in the games from the very beginning. From arrogant jerks to friendly competitors to whatever the friend group in Kalos had going on, you always had someone to compare yourself against. Along your journey, they serve as a motivation and a way to ensure you have what it takes to face the challenges ahead. Usually, you start your Pokemon journeys together, so they are able to serve as a benchmark for progress. The Generation 3 games were no exception. You have a standard rival, either Brendan or May, who are naturally skilled with Pokemon, and you battle them several times over the course of the game. They provide a healthy challenge, but aren't too antagonistic or annoying. If anything, they don't really have much of a personality at all. However, you also meet another character who has always been one of my favorites in the entire series. An initially unremarkable, sickly boy named Wally. His path from being a shy and weak Pokemon trainer to one of the strongest in the game is an incredibly endearing and relatable story, and by the end of it, I was rooting for him more than even myself. I know some of you read the video title and are rushing to the comments to tell me that N is actually the best Pokemon rival, but I'm not here to pit these green boys against each other. Instead, I want to conduct a character analysis to show why Wally is such a great character. I will only be using the Hoenn remakes, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, for this video, as Wally's characterization is greatly improved without any real drawbacks. So, without further ado, let's get into why Wally is the best Pokemon rival in the entire series. We first meet Wally in Petalburg City while visiting our character's father, Norman, at the Pokemon gym he runs. In our first conversation with Wally, we discover that he's moving to Verdant Turf Town for the fresh air and would like a Pokemon to accompany him. Given that he has never caught a Pokemon, Norman lets him borrow his Zigzagoon and asks us to chaperone him to help out. We do just that and help him catch his very own Pokemon, a Ralts, an anxious Pokemon for an anxious child. From this brief first encounter, we can tell a lot about him as a character already. He seems very shy, likely a little nerdy, and not very confident in himself. However, he's very grateful for your help and seems excited to finally be an official Pokemon trainer. After he leaves, you can head over to his parents' house where we learn that he had a mysterious illness his whole life, likely some sort of respiratory disease, which is why he's moving to Verdant Turf Town, as the ashes from the volcanoes of Hoenn don't affect that town as much. If you go into his room, you can see that he's clearly a Pokemon enthusiast, and has likely wanted to be a Pokemon trainer for years. Books on Pokemon take up his entire bookshelf, and you can see that he has placed pins in the globe in his room, likely pointing out places he wants to visit in the future with this Pokemon. You can also see traces of his lack of confidence, though, through the notebook on his desk, which shows a bunch of writing that has been written, erased, and rewritten multiple times. While he clearly has big dreams, his timid nature and chronic illness has been stopping him from achieving those goals. And I can imagine he was likely working up the courage to finally ask his town's gym leader for help for months, if not longer. This is even further backed up by the fact that the very first Pokemon he caught was a Ralts. While you may just assume it's because they are both shy and green that Ralts was picked, I believe it goes deeper than that. In its Pokédex entry in Omega Ruby, it is stated that, and I quote, "This Pokemon rarely appears before people, but when it does, it draws closer if it senses that the person has a positive disposition." Despite Wally's timidness, his Ralts was able to tell that he is actually a deeply positive person, and was drawn to him. Before moving on, I also want to draw attention to our role in his story. In many ways throughout the game, we serve the role for him that our rival serves for us. A mentor, and someone who is, canonically at least, just a little bit better. We are the naturally skilled Pokemon trainer who teaches him how to catch a Pokemon, always beats the gyms first, and that he measures himself up to. While it will take some time for this dynamic to really set in, it's an important one to be aware of as the story progresses. We next see Wally with his uncle in New Mauville, and it seems a lot has changed in that brief time. While his uncle wants to grab lunch or go shopping, Wally instead makes a beeline for the city's gym, clearly showing a lot more confidence in his abilities as a trainer. After catching up with them, we can see how determined Wally is to face the gym, despite his uncle's trepidation. Wally has probably waited for this moment for a long time and finally worked up the nerve to do it, despite still being a beginner. We end up battling him to test his strength, and after defeating his team of 1, he seems fairly discouraged, but promises to grow stronger. The highlight of this encounter is that Wally almost works up the courage to ask us to be his rival, though he falls a little short. While it's clear he still has a lot of work to do with his Pokemon before being a real challenge to us, the real issue is that he still lacks confidence. He was likely trying to challenge the gym to prove to himself and to us that he is a worthwhile rival, and though he's not there yet, he's making progress. That progress will come with hard work though, and not through rushing it. After he leaves, his uncle even points out that his attitude towards the future has completely changed since he met us. And after traveling to Verdant Turf shortly after this encounter, we find out that he is already out training to grow stronger. He is clearly taking this whole thing seriously, and he intends to one day be as strong as us. The next time we see him isn't for a battle, but we get a great moment between his father and Norman, where they reflect on their children growing up. Wally likely felt for a long time that as someone with a chronic illness and not a ton of confidence, that even though he loved Pokemon, he didn't have what it takes to be a trainer. However, now, he not only has himself to rely on, but he has the support of you, his family, and his Pokemon to make his dreams a reality. Quite a bit of time passes before we see Wally again. In that time, you complete most of the main story of the game and collect all the gym badges, and it turns out you weren't the only one getting stronger. At the end of Victory Road, Wally is waiting for one last chance to show you just how much he's grown. Before getting into the battle itself, let's discuss the scenery, because this is one of the most iconic battle locations in the series' long history. Wally is waiting for you in a field of spider lilies, and if you're an anime fan, you may be familiar with this flower. It often represents death, and it's usually seen when a character has died, is going to die soon, or in an area that has experienced death in the past. In this case though, the death these flowers are alluding to isn't literal, but represents the extraordinary changes that Wally has gone through over the course of the game. We weren't the only ones defeating all the gym leaders over the course of our journey. Wally was on his own journey and achieved all the same feats. The sickly, shy child that we had to chaperone while he caught his first Pokemon is long gone. Wally now has the confidence of a Pokemon League champion and is waiting for one last battle with you before taking on the Elite Four. In fact, he even got there before you did. From the start of the battle, you can tell that Wally is fully confident in himself, as the battle animations convey it. He even technically has a new character model, sporting a more laid-back look and a confident expression, really highlighting just how much has changed for him. He's now sporting a keystone, showing he is a fully fledged trainer and is just as capable of becoming the champion as you are. During the battle, we see that his once shy Ralts is now a strong, gallant Pokemon and reflects the growth that Wally went through as well. The battle is even a fairly tough challenge, even if difficulty in Pokemon isn't what it used to be. And ultimately, when you beat him, he's not upset or ashamed of himself, because he knows that even though he lost, he put up a good fight. After taking a moment to compose himself, he thanks you for everything you've done to help him grow stronger, and sends you on your way to become the Pokemon League champion, while he continues to work hard to grow even stronger. While Wally's arc ends there, we do see him a few more times during the postgame. He is briefly featured in the Delta episode where he gets his keystone stolen. Ultimately, we help him get it back in the end, but he doesn't play a huge role in this story. He also gets invited by Norman to go to the battle resort with us. Norman has also been keeping a keen eye on Wally's progress, and it's clear he is proud of how far Wally has come in his growth. In fact, Wally gets so excited to be there that he ends up bulldozing through several Team Magma or Team Aqua admins, showing just how much confidence and excitement for the world he now has. You're able to battle against Wally at the Battle Resort, where he continues to grow stronger with each match. While his story is over, and it's clear his presence at the Battle Resort is more of a gameplay mechanic than anything else, I like to imagine that Wally is working hard to train his Pokemon and is still aiming to be even stronger than you one day. Wally is a character that I have always found to be immensely relatable. Unlike the playable character or the kinds of rivals we usually see in Pokemon games, he's not a prodigy and is not initially encouraged by his family to pursue a journey as a Pokemon trainer. He's shy and deals with a chronic illness, though it's clear he has big aspirations if only he could come out of his shell. Over the course of the game, we see him do just that. The boy you saw meekly walk into the Petalburg Gym to ask for a Pokemon is not the same one waiting for you at the end of Victory Road. He clearly looks up to the player as a mentor, but unlike a character like Kieran from the Scarlet and Violet DLC, it's endearing and not off-putting. He's like a little brother that you want so badly to see succeed. It is true that most of this development happens off-camera, but in keeping with the idea that we are his rival, it makes sense. He is on his own journey of self-discovery, and we see him a few times along the way to see how much progress he's been making. Though I must admit, 2 or 3 more encounters with him would have been nice. Ultimately, there are Pokemon rivals in the series that are more entwined with the overall narrative, with arguably more compelling storylines, or maybe a personality that is more in line with your personal tastes. But for me, Wally stands with the best of them. Maybe I'm just a sucker for underdog stories, or see myself reflected in much of his characterization, but either way, he will always be one of my favorite characters in the series. I would love to hear about who your favorite rival is, so let me know in the comments. This video was really fun to make, so I might do more on characters I like from Pokemon and any other series. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.